Hello, I'm David Manley, and I will be presenting Blockchain Distributed Ledger Technology. What is blockchain? Blockchain is a digitized, decentralized public ledger of cryptocurrency transactions. It's also referred to as distributed ledger technology. It is currently taking the financial services by storm with venture capital and investment financing new technology startups. The debate over the extent of whether blockchain will be able to deliver on its promises is still ongoing, but a consensus is emerging that it represents a real innovation over many of the systems and processes used in the financial services today, and its application to other market sectors is also being actively explored. Today, internet commerce is exclusively tied to financial institutions, serving as the trusted third party who process and mediate electronic transactions. The role of the trusted third party is to validate, safeguard, and preserve transactions. When Bob wants to transfer his money to Ann, a trusted third party must participate and also adds a significant transaction cost, hedging against some fraud being committed, or which in the current online environment is unavoidable and may require their remediation. In this environment, there's an increasing exposure to fraud as cyber criminals have improved their skills at attacking central repositories to gain unauthorized access and have established a black market for peddling valid credentials. Since its origin in 2008 as a decentralized distributed ledger for Bitcoins, the capability of blockchain to address the vulnerabilities of using a trusted third party is to validate, safeguard, and maintain the historic record of transactions is gaining significant momentum. So why use blockchain? What is being proposed is a distributed ledger that is a data store of logged transactions replicated across a permission distributed network of participating nodes. It uses a cryptography and digital signatures to establish valid parties and transactions such that all the nodes are in agreement on the order and the state of the ledgers in near real time without reliance on a trusted third party to hold a true golden copy. It has a practically immutable, verifiably true audit trail in which an attacker is unable to effectively alter transactions. These distributed ledgers are available near real time for audit and provide a comprehensive trail of ownership and transfer between parties. The distributed network deployment makes the ledgers resilient against systems outages and malicious attacks. The term frictionless is used to describe the transfer of assets between parties, since no central authority is required to participate in the immediate exchange. Outages and bottlenecks at a single point of failure have been eliminated. So, what is the blockchain process? Using a distributed ledger, Bob wants to send money to Ann. Now, Bob's transaction enters the network, and a mining node makes that transaction into a block. The block is then broadcast into the network and received by listening nodes. The nodes review the block and the proof of work that accompanies it and approves it as a valid transaction and block. The block is then added to the blockchain, and then finally, Bob's money is now moved to Ann. The mining operation is performed by nodes on the network that are compensated for their work. There's a need for a difficult computation to take place to slow the creation of a block by any one node to prevent a malicious attacker from creating a number of blocks in the chain and avoiding the required consensus to take place, which maintains the integrity of the blockchain ledger. The miner must take the hash value of a prior block, hash that value with a transaction value, and then hash their value with a nonce, a once-used timestamp, such that the resulting hash is less than some defined maximum. If it fails to be below the maximum acceptable value, another nonce needs to be selected and hashed with that value again until requirement is met, and only then can the miner's work be accepted. Upon meeting the requirement, the final proof of work is sent to the network for validation, and upon its acceptance, the block is added to the blockchain. To appreciate this effort, The effort to find the nonce is in the order of flipping a coin 64 times and getting all heads. When a mining node discovers that another miner has successfully mined a transaction that it is processing, it'll discard its work and move on to the next transaction. And there are occasions when two miners have solved the same transaction, and this can cause a fork. Blockchains resolve these situations by consensus. Over time, the most popular blockchain is accepted as the de facto blockchain. The data storage approach is in the form of a Merkle tree, combining branches as blocks so that the malicious attacks or attempts of double spending on the blockchain will be unsuccessful, as the attacker must alter the target block and all subsequent blocks that follow it. Given the number of other miners working in concert, the corrupted blockchain will never get the consensus required to become valid. It follows then that the older the block, the more secure it is in the ledger. It is this security aspect which gives the distributed ledger an advantage over a centralized database where the threat of a hacker altering records has serious implications, making it rely heavily on prevention and detection mechanisms. The solid foundation of blockchain, ownership history, double spending prevention, audit transparency, was tested and demonstrated in its introduction as a distributed ledger for cryptocurrency. In that role, providing transparency in the transaction value was important. But for the distributed ledger to be of value for other purposes, the ability to provide parties the confidentiality that they require naturally led to the need for encryption of text messages, while requiring the validation of network nodes. Given that the nodes only require that hash values agree, the nodes are able to confirm the validity of the block and add it to the chain. The form of the payload test then evolved to what is now a smart contract, programs with logic that establish a state that can be communicated to all responsible parties. So what is now at the forefront of the current research questions is how to address the encryption, decryption, and storage of these private payloads without sacrificing scalability and the ledger immutability based on the network consensus. The greatest developments in blockchain today is in the implementation of smart contracts, where business requirements are programmed in the blockchain and executed along with the transaction. The Ethereum platform focuses on the delivery of the smart contract, where terms of the contract are encoded so that they can be recognized and then executed when those term conditions are satisfied. The program code copies conventional commercial agreements by digitizing transactions and then authenticating them in the blockchain. But the incorporation of smart contracts into the blockchain causes us to revisit the requirement for consensus and yet provide for the selective privacy. Only participants in the contract need to be privy to the contract requirements, and there may be a need for selective participation in the network itself. There are many proposals to address the lack of privacy in smart contracts, such as zero-knowledge proofs, a mechanism whereby enough data is provided to assure that the node is reviewing the actual contract, but without having access to all the information in the contract that would violate the privacy agreement. Different application platforms are being built to address these requirements on the Ethereum infrastructure. And a number of consortiums have formed to standardize the approaches and tools to tailor the distributed ledger technology to meet the needs of the enterprise in augmenting or replacing their existing legacy systems and address the privacy requirement. And one of these popular platforms is Quorum. It's based on Ethereum, and the remainder of this presentation will be about Quorum and the possible applications that can be developed to run on Quorum today and into the future. The Quorum platform preserves key attributes of Ethereum, like ensuring that every node on the network participates in the validation, and this increases the security of the entire network, while only revealing the details of the transaction to the private parties of the transaction. It provides a transaction manager to simplify managing transactions, handling for the developer. It provides key management and utilities for the encryption and decryption of private transaction data. It contains Quorum Chain, an application utility for building out voting and consensus management, say for collecting shareholder proxy votes. And there's a network manager for logically creating or segregating access to the network. And ZK Snarks, a clever utility for nodes to be assured of the correctness of computations within a smart contract without providing the nodes any details contained in the smart contract. The Quorum architecture separates the need that all nodes share the blockchain for the consensus management to guarantee its integrity and the need for privacy of the contracts between parties. It provides the components required for developers to build their applications with utilities providing peer-to-peer key management, data encryption, and payload storage facility for smart contracts and other assets shared between responsible parties. The structure provided by Quorum hastens the deployment of blockchain adoption in the enterprise environments and is a positive indication that blockchain will be gaining a significant footprint in the ways tech transactions are managed in the global economy. Quorum is being developed to bridge the gap where existing smart contract systems that are replicated over the shared blockchain ledgers are not able to provide the required level of privacy that are achieved today using the central repository-based systems. In the blockchain distributed ledger, the transactions and the smart contract state data are exposed on the replicated ledger. There are a number of ways to address the lack of privacy with smart contracts, such as zero-knowledge proofs and employing different cryptographic protocols. Quorum provides the best-of-breed approaches to resolving how to deliver these requirements in a manner that developers can engineer into their solutions with tried and tested tools built upon the Ethereum virtual machine. Developers are provided tools to establish the privacy requirements for their applications. Nodes can be challenged to provide a proof of state before being permitted to participate in sharing a transaction. Private blockchains can be established, limiting access to only responsible parties, freeing the other nodes from tracking these aspects of transactions and improving the scalability of the system. And even the nodes are restricted from accessing the smart contract to transactions where they're not privy. They still are provided with a list of transactions which they must validate and add to the blockchain. The Quorum Consortium seeks to provide developers the toolset and structure required to write smart contracts between responsible parties and be assured that the contracts are secured between the parties and regulators, and yet remain impervious to outside eyes. The blockchain distributed ledger technology has crossed the first hurdle. Is this secure? Now, to find its place in the global electronic marketplace, it has to pass two other hurdles. Is it private, and can it scale? Now, this is just a short list of various areas where the blockchain distributed ledger technology is being developed today as a means to add new capabilities or replace existing centralized solutions. The financial services sector holds much promise in using blockchain distributed technology to reduce their operations overhead. According to Santander InnoVentures, blockchain could eliminate $15 to $20 billion in costs from back office operations by 2022. And while increasing investor confidence in products whose underlying assets are currently opaque, like securitization, there are many opportunities where using micropayments between people without the need for a third party now see the adoption of blockchain distributed ledgers as the most efficient way to manage these transactions. And for example, it could be easily set up to manage the transactions for households and businesses producing solar power and selling it directly to their neighbor on their smart grid. Or the music industry, as it struggles with how it can adequately compensate songwriters and performers for their work in today's shared media offerings. Smart contracts trigger upon the receipt of copyrighted materials provide a better means to assure that compensations are being tracked and delivered. And the tracking of goods through complex distribution channels is also better performed by blockchain distributed ledger technology. Consider how a proper labeling and tracking of pharmaceutical prescription medications could be improved using blockchain technology so that the entire history of transfers from the manufacturer to the consumer can be tracked, safeguarding the chain of custody and preventing counterfeiters from inserting drugs and entering the delivery chain. Using blockchain technology for voting in public elections or corporate proxies are also good ideas for its application. Essentially, if there is a distrust in the use of a central authority or fear of how malicious activities could impact the centralized system, then this is the technology that's being proposed as the solution to those concerns. And at first, there may be some delays in the adoption of blockchain technology, where government regulations or government approvals are required before it can be used to replace third-party centralized systems. But the continued commitment of financial and technology leaders are providing the assurance that it will be making inroads this year and for the coming decade. I appreciate you listening to me, and hope you have a nice day.